Are President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cooking up a surprise for the Houthis? United States Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee seems to think so, and following Tuesday evening's intercepted ballistic missile attack, he said maybe the B-2 should visit Yemen. And meanwhile, alongside talks for a deal to end the fighting, the IDF has engaged in intense activity in the Gaza Strip, announcing the deployment of forces and the missions that still remain for the IDF in the Strip. To start with, less than a month after it was deployed out, Division 99 is now operating in the Gaza Strip again. All of this is being done in order to lay siege to Hamas fighters ahead of a possible ceasefire, and we'll take a look at the decisions taken this week in Israel's security cabinet. And in related news, proof has emerged from Gaza that Hamas is shooting at residents and distributing false footage. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, and together with Shoshani, we bring you the whole truth about what is happening in Israel. So Division 98 has launched a new operation inside Gaza City alongside Division 162. And before the troops went in, the Air Force eliminated dozens of terrorists in the area to allow the ground advance. So far, about 100 terror targets have been struck, including from the sea. And amidst these kinetic strikes, the IDF now estimates that within about 1 to 2 weeks, the goals of Operation Gideon's Chariots will be achieved. At the same time, figures in the security establishment are pressing the political echelon to make a decision about what comes next, to continue forward with full conquest of the Gaza Strip or withdraw in favor of a deal. With 31 IDF soldiers killed in action since the ceasefire ended, the IDF's fighting in the Gaza Strip once again reaches a crossroads where two aims intersect: returning the hostages and defeating Hamas. The general impression now is that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is first trying to reach a hostage deal. Contrary to the Chief of Staff's presentation, and following Israel's efforts to reach a deal based on the Witkoff outline and Hamas's refusal to agree, a new Qatari proposal has come to the negotiating table, under which 10 living hostages and the remains of 18 hostages who have died in captivity will be released in the initial stage. Will this latest deal be the one that everyone can agree to? Let me know what you think in the comments. And TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Shoshani will explain why Netanyahu is heading to Washington for a decisive visit this coming Monday, as President Trump tells the press that Netanyahu wants to bring this conflict to a conclusion, and added, "I will be very tough with him about ending the war." However, President Trump also said with a smile that it is unprecedented for there to be 3 meetings within half a year between the leaders of Israel and the United States, and he added, "We should celebrate the achievement against Iran." That sounds like Iran will be the first item on the agenda for their meeting, and the two will coordinate an enforcement policy to prevent the renewal of Iran's nuclear project, and will plan the Middle East future. Mati will bring us all the details that we know so far about this decisive White House visit. And meanwhile, in the United States, patience with harsh treatment of Israel has run out, and they demanded the firing of the United Nations envoy. So guys, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 635 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region operating under the orders of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we start, I want to call on you to keep showing up for Israel. We need more people these days to stand with the truth about what is happening in the Holy Land. Here at Boots on the Ground, we work day and night to bring you all the facts, and today we need you. So guys, help us spread the truth by clicking the subscribe button and sharing these videos with anybody who wants to know what's happening in Israel, boots on the ground. We'll begin today's report with events in the Gaza Strip, as in parallel with efforts to jumpstart a hostage deal and end the campaign in Gaza, it appears that the IDF is working with extra intensity to make the most of the time left and complete its missions across the Strip. In the center, the troops are eliminating dozens of terrorists in face-to-face combat. In the south, the Navy is striking strategic targets, and in the north, the Air Force is conducting powerful strikes to enable ground advances. To zoom in, last week, Division 99 returned to operate from the fourth time since the start of the Swords of Iron War in the Gaza Strip. The division's regular and reserve forces are operating in the north and in the center of Gaza, locating and destroying military infrastructure above and below ground and carried out defensive missions for the Gaza envelope communities. Division 98 has begun a new operation in the Gaza Strip and is now active in Gaza City in the north alongside Division 162. Division 36 forces have expanded their activity in recent days to additional areas of the Gaza Strip beyond Khan Yunis. In the area, the troops have eliminated dozens of terrorists and destroyed hundreds of terror infrastructures above and below the ground. And in Rafah, forces of the Gaza Division are operating, and over the past 24 hours, the troops guided Navy vessels that struck several terror targets in southern Gaza. On the outskirts of Jabalia, Beit Hanun, and along the Netzarim corridor sit forces of Division 99. For now, two divisions are maneuvering in the Gaza City area, Division 98 maneuvering in the northern Gaza Strip and Division 162. As part of the combat efforts, the forces are operating in eastern Gaza City, deepening the operational gains on the ground. The soldiers are thwarting terror infrastructure above and below the ground and eliminating terrorists of the terror organizations in the Gaza Strip. And according to the IDF spokesperson's unit, about 100 terror targets have been struck so far, including terrorists, weapons depots, command posts, and enemy observation positions. The coordinator of government activities in the territories released recordings on Tuesday from recent works in which Gaza residents who are in the humanitarian aid distribution compounds testify to an IDF civil administration officer about how the Hamas terror organization carries out terror influence and psychological operations against the residents in order to sabotage the distribution of food packages at the compounds. In the recordings, they testify that Hamas terror organization shoots at Gaza residents near the compounds, spreads false claims about IDF fire, publishes fake reports about numbers of casualties, and disseminates fabricated footage. For instance, in the recordings, a Gazan man tells the civil administration officer that there are only a handful of fatalities, maybe 5 or 6 at most. In the videos on social media, it looks like an Indian movie. Hamas uses pictures of white bags from hospitals. No big incident happened there. He added, there are images showing the Americans opening the gates and letting people in to take aid. Everything was documented. There was no shooting. In 90% of the cases, the army is not involved. Hamas's media, the one in Egypt and Turkey, wants to cause the American aid to fail in any way possible. The Gazans stressed that most of those who write against the aid of the American civilian company are not from Gaza at all. They're from Turkey and from Egypt. Hamas intentionally shoots at people. They want to show the public that Hamas shoot at them so that no one goes there. This is what's going on. In other words, As we've long known, Hamas is a cruel terrorist organization that starves the population, does everything it can to prevent the successes of food distribution in the Strip via the distribution compounds, and endangers the population in order to preserve its rule in the Gaza Strip. Therefore, it is very important that you stand with the truth and spread the truth about what is happening in Israel. We will continue to report every development on the matter, and we invite you to stay tuned to the truth with one small click on the subscribe button so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And speaking of support, we've shown you in previous shows about how Israel has been through hell this last 2 years. Missile strikes from Iran, from Hezbollah, from the Houthis in Yemen, and from Hamas, and they have meant that cities were under fire, lives were lost, and homes were destroyed. And through all of it, Magen David Adom was there first, treating the injured, evacuating the wounded, and saving lives under fire. Now, the immediate threat may have passed. Maybe the war is over for now, but the recovery has just begun. Hundreds of people are still in hospitals, communities are still shaken, and we are still fighting Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And Magen David Adom, they're still working, rebuilding, restructuring, retraining, so they'll be ready for whatever comes next. They've given everything, and now it's our turn to give back. So guys, if you want to help Magen David Adom and save lives in Israel, go to www.savelifeisrael.com. Again, that's savelifeisrael.com. Help Magen David Adom recover, restock, and be ready, because saving lives doesn't stop when the rockets do. Now, let's get back to the news. In a political security update received by the Israeli government, it was said that the Hamas terrorist organization continues to cling to its refusal to reach a framework for returning the hostages. While the State of Israel agreed to the updated Witkoff outline, Hamas again refused to accept the United States envoy's proposal, and Egypt officially entered the negotiation picture this past week. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Attia sharply clarified Egypt's position, outlining a broader framework for a crisis. According to him, the main goal is to quickly reach a stable ceasefire agreement that will allow continued negotiations for the release of the Israeli hostages. And meanwhile, details of the new Qatari proposal were revealed, which included a ceasefire of about 60 days, the release of 8 live hostages on the first day, with the release of 2 additional hostages on day 50. The release of the remains of 18 hostages who died in captivity will occur in 3 stages, and the IDF will withdraw to the Morag corridor. Negotiation insiders say there is a high chance of a deal, yet disagreements remain between the two sides. The complex talks continue, with the main goal still the safe return of the hostages and achieving stability in this region. In addition, despite the planned military operation, insiders say a partial ceasefire for the sake of a deal might emerge along the way. This is also where the Prime Minister is still trying to steer without compromising on the goal of toppling Hamas. Guys, here at TBN Israel, we will keep reporting on every development on the subject, and we invite you to be part of the team by spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time. And now, we turn to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst, Mati Shoshani. Mati, President Trump said that he and Netanyahu should celebrate the strike in Iran during Monday's White House visit. Yet he also said he'll be tough with him about reaching a deal to end the war in Gaza. So what's happening behind the scenes here?
Thank you, Yair. Indeed, this is a fascinating time that we're living in. Israel and the US have beat the Iranians to such a degree that we're now talking about reorganizing, reshuffling the entire power dynamic of the Middle East. In fact, President Trump is talking about taking everything that's happened in the last couple weeks and pivoting that and pushing with that towards a new regional order. So here's what's been happening over recent weeks. It's been fascinating, it's been fast-paced, it's been dramatic and historic all at the same time. Last week, in a swift 12-day attack, Israel, with the aid of the Americans, brought down much of the Iranian defenses and much of the Iranian ability to project power in the Middle East. And the US, together with Israel, is now looking to use that momentum to completely reshape the region that we're living in. The key points that are on the table right now are rebuilding a relationship with the Iranians, and more importantly and more urgently for the people of Israel, rebuilding the situation in the Gaza Strip, reaching an agreement, reaching a ceasefire. So how did we get to this place? How did we get to a place where a week after we end a major conflict against Iran, we're now talking about reshaping power dynamics, agreements, and possibly another phase of the Abraham Accords here in the Middle East? Well, let me tell you how we got to this very moment. The Israeli and American attack on Iran, that 12-day blitz attack on the Iranians, it proved several points. It proved to the world that Israel is able to stand for itself and fend for itself. It also proved that the Americans, both on the government level and on the military level, are willing to back their words with very bold actions. And that's exactly what happened against the Iranians. This is an isolated event. This is the end of a 2-year almost series, or year and a half long series of events that started with Hamas Gaza, continued with Hezbollah in Lebanon, continued with reshaping the region in Syria, and now the Iranians. And of course, in the interim period over there, there was a massive American strike on Houthi targets in mostly northern Yemen. All of those attacks, all of those events together signal to this region, signal to the powers that be in the world, that Israel, and specifically the US, are really willing to do what it takes to reshape power balances, and more importantly, willing to stand up for what's right when it's needed, even if it requires military action. And that's exactly what happened in the most decisive way possible. Israel and the US stood up to the Iranians, and now we're looking at a new situation, a new reality in which we can reshape the power balance in the Middle East. There's one big thing that needs to be removed off the table, and that is the ongoing military operations in the Gaza Strip, and specifically the Israeli hostages that remain in captivity within Hamas's grasp. And the reason for that is, for Israel, we can't really go back home. We can't end this campaign without ending the Hamas saga. It was the opening chords of this ongoing campaign since October 7th, 2023, and it will be probably the ending chords of the same military operation as we wrap up things in the Gaza Strip. But on a bigger picture, when you really zoom out to what's happening in the region, you see the drama of what's taking place. The fact that Israel, together with the US, was able to project this much power to reshape the perception and to bring down a foreign doctrine by the Iranians that had been built over 40 years, in which they built Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and countless other, let's call it terrorist proxies and other arms of the octopus. All of these things have come down quickly in just a matter of a year and a half. And what that does, it signals to everyone in this region that there is a different reality that could exist in the Middle East. A reality in which Israel, again with the US, is leading the thrust towards a stabilized region, a stabilized Middle East. And that stabilized region looks like the next phase of the Abraham Accords. This is something we've talked about for years now. It was actually on the cusp of happening with the Saudis before October 7th, 2023. And what it looks like is Israel, together with the US, entering the next phase of regional stability agreements. So just to remind you, the Abraham Accords were a series of treaties between countries that never had really a war with Israel, the United Arab Emirates, several countries in Northern Africa, etc., sort of reaching an agreement with Israel for trade, for information sharing. Let's call it an alliance of interests more than a military pact. And the Saudis have been waiting to see how Israel and the US will deal with the Iranians. And now that we've dealt with them, well, now it's time to move on to the next phase of the Abraham Accords, which is amazing for Israel, amazing for the Saudis, amazing for regional stability and regional peace. And peace brings trade, which we call the dividend of peace. And that's exactly what this region needs. But it's not just the Saudis that are thinking of entering sort of into the fold of American influence in Israeli partnership. It's also the Syrians. Yes, even the Syrians, a country that was controlled by a dictator for decades, is now thinking behind closed doors of joining into the Abraham Accords. But what it took to get to this moment is an act of violence. It took fighting against Hamas. It took toppling Hezbollah. It took striking deep within Iran to reach the point where we can now talk about stabilizing the region. What's been interesting is that the biggest piece for Israel that has to be resolved is the Hamas-Gaza situation. And on that, unlike in previous times, the US is completely standing behind and with Israel. One, they've floated, once again, an agreement to which Israel has agreed for a ceasefire and an exchange of hostages and sort of an end to the war. But at the same time, US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has said very clearly that he understands the equation is more difficult than people perceive, and Israel giving aid to Hamas prolongs their control over the Gaza Strip. So for once, we have this very, very strong sort of one side of the aisle to the other support of Israel within the US administration, and also a very, very large amount of pressure on Hamas to end the ongoing conflict. And that is good news for Israel, that is good news for the hostages, and good news for this region, because if we end the conflict with Hamas, we can move on to capitalizing on all the good that came out of the last year and a half as far as projecting power for Israel and for the US. And that good will be a season of stability, a season where the forces of Iran in this region are diminished and canceled out completely, and that brings trade agreements, that brings open seas for trade and economic growth, and that brings a season of peace that we didn't imagine would happen. I know people love talking about, peace in the Middle East and reshaping global orders, etc., etc. And usually it's talked about as in something that's happening in the future. But let me tell you, we're living in a historic season. We're living in a time where we get to capitalize on the bravery of Israeli Air Force pilots and Israeli soldiers, on the boldness of the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and the government beneath him, and the American President Donald Trump and the people that he led in being able to take action in a swift and decisive way against an Iranian enemy. And that action, that boldness, that violence allows us now to be talking about reshaping this region in a peaceful way. The next weeks and the next months could be historic in a way that we've never seen in my lifetime. They could mean the entry of a new era of peace, of prosperity, and of stability in this region, of rebuilding Syria for the Syrian people, of rebuilding Lebanon in a way that isn't controlled by Hezbollah, rebuilding the Gaza Strip for the people of Gaza without Hamas, and taking away the nuclear threat of Iran and bringing stability and calm to this region that has needed it so much.
Thank you very much, Mati, for clearing things up. And to you at home, keep spreading the truth and stand with Israel. Spread the truth to as many people as possible and click that subscribe button so that you remain informed about what's happening in Israel, in this region, and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. The IDF spokesperson announced on Tuesday evening that the Air Force intercepted a missile that had been launched from Yemen towards Israeli territory. Alerts were sounded in several areas of the country, including in the center, the Shfela, and Samaria. It was further reported that following the alerts that were activated in the Gaza envelope region, the Air Force intercepted 2 launches that crossed from the southern part of the Gaza Strip. No casualties were recorded in either event. After the launch from Yemen, Defense Minister Israel Katz threatened the fate of Yemen will be the fate of Tehran. After we struck the head of the snake in Tehran, we will also strike the tail of the snake in Yemen. Whoever raises his hand against Israel, his hand will be cut off. And elsewhere, United States Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee sent a very pointed hint today when he posted a tweet threatening the Houthi rebels in Yemen, writing, among other things, maybe the B-2 bombers should pay a visit to Yemen. In a meeting that Ambassador Huckabee held with the mothers of soldiers from the Mothers of the Fighters organization, he further stated, everything that goes in ends up in Hamas's hands. We know that. Israel is forced to confront United Nations agencies, and the United Nations is the offender. We will do everything to back Israel against the United Nations so that the aid is not transferred to Hamas. It is my privilege to represent President Trump and the American people in solidarity with our one true and only partner in the world. We have friends, we have allies, but we have only one genuine partner, and that is the State of Israel. So, I want to say thank you to you, Ambassador Huckabee, for being a real friend to the Jewish people, and even more so for showing the heart of the American administration. And meanwhile, on Tuesday evening, the Ministry of Defense published a summary data from the war with Iran in Operation Rising Lion, revealing new footage of interceptor launchers during the fighting. The ministry highlighted, amongst other things, the multi-layered defense array, the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow, which saved many lives and prevented property damage estimated at more than 50 billion shekels. The Directorate of Defense Research and Development, MAFAT, in the Ministry of Defense released the data in a briefing by MAFAT Director Brigadier General Dr. Danny Gold. A statement by the ministry said that MAFAT, together with the IDF branches, ministry bodies, and the defense industries, has led the research, development, technological applications, and the building of technological force for the IDF in recent decades, and particularly in the accelerated force build-up race carried out ahead of Operation Rising Lion. Some of the weapon systems employed for the first time in the preventative strike against the nuclear sites and the ballistic array in Iran were developed over decades precisely for this purpose. These blue and white munitions have been deployed over about 20 years, as well as technological capabilities in digital, artificial intelligence, AI, and electronic warfare, which were integrated into all arrays. This is happening with outstanding performance. How outstanding was the performance, you might ask? 86% of the ballistic missiles launched from Iran towards Israeli territory were successfully intercepted after upgraded versions were installed in the Arrow system a week before the operation. The Ministry of Defense emphasized that the potential damage prevented thanks to this air defense systems is 7 times the damage actually incurred. It was further noted that version updates in the Iron Dome and David's Sling systems and the breakthrough Iron Dome test against swarms of UAVs conducted in March this year, together with an unprecedented IDF air defense effort using additional means, led to more than 99% interception of Iranian UAVs. And during the war, the UAV array operated continuously in the third circle of the first time, carried out thousands of flight hours and more than 500 strikes and eliminations in Iran, and this is according to the ministry. The statement continued by saying that the UAVs reduced risk to fighter pilots, hunted launchers and missiles, and saved many lives, while also preventing much damage to the State of Israel. The UAVs carried out thousands of flight hours in Operation Rising Lion, and together with Operations Swords of Iron accounted for 60% of Air Force flight hours and 50% of IDF eliminations. But that's not all the briefing covered. And according to the Space Directorate, during the operation, tens of millions of square kilometers were photographed at very high quality day and night. The satellite constellation also provided vital, high availability communications to support strike operations. In addition, hundreds of targets every day were supplied to the IDF covertly and without endangering our forces. Collection was carried out with high repetition day and night, enabling rapid target closure. More than 12,000 satellite images were taken over Iranian territory. The satellite constellation accompanied the strike mission and the collection of thousands of targets. In the R&D unit, they described that in the opening blow and in the days until the air superiority over Tehran was achieved, and also afterwards, the Air Force made extensive use of medium and long-range munitions and standoff attack munitions. These munitions were developed over years under Mafat leadership and the defense industries of Israel, and were a decisive factor in achieving surprise and air superiority in Iranian skies. It was emphasized that the ability to hit targets precisely from a distance, despite the enemy's electronic warfare environment, is a unique Israeli capability developed over years. The fighter jets flew in Iranian skies with self-defense systems against enemy missiles that were developed in Israel. To make a brief comment on all of this, here in Israel, we know who our friends are, and we look forward to sharing all that we've learned in this war with our friends. That includes all the information about the performance of these weapons and the equipment we developed and built together, and much else. We know you've got battles to fight as well, and we want to help you as much as possible to get ready for them. Hopefully, just seeing how ready you are for a fight will make the other side back off, and there won't be need for a fight any longer. But if there is one, we want to do everything that we can to make sure that our allies win it. The friends I'm talking about right now know who they are, and those guys on the other side, who we know watch boots on the ground as well, also know who they are, and I hope everybody is paying attention. With that, I invite everybody who's watching to keep spreading the truth about Israel, share and follow us, and most importantly, don't forget to pray, because this is a spiritual war. Guys, when you pray, make it personal. Pray for the hostages in the Gaza Strip to be released soon back to their loved ones in Israel. Pray for all the innocent civilians that are affected by these regimes of terrorism, terrorist groups, and basically very bad people. Pray for the Iranian people to have strength, courage in the coming days to replace this evil leadership that is oppressing them. Let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.